Alrighty, and we got this. Okay, so today is going to be about designing the perfect week to get more done using the slimy frog technique. And I know all of you are wondering, what the heck is the slimy frog technique? And the purpose of this is so that you land six-figure salary jobs, get promoted, do a lot done while working smart rather than hard. And so let me tell you a little bit about my story and why I'm the best person to talk to you about burnout. And that's because I went from a corporate zombie to a very fulfilled professional. And it started in 2017 when I lost 50% of my pancreas to a job. Oh my goodness, that was, one of my most terrible, moments of my life. And I remember being in so much pain after the surgery. I just couldn't stand straight for weeks. In fact, I remember that I had to put a mountain of pillows that I had to lean on because I couldn't lie down flat from the pain. And the lowest moment for me was when I was in, just recovering from my surgery. And I had to pee in front of a nurse because I was so used to being this go-getter, super independent. And here I am, in this moment, not even able to go to the bathroom on my own. I really felt like a tortured animal going through this. And this was all because of a job. At that point, I was 34 years old. I was a female immigrant with six-figure salary in tech, was in a leadership position at a top consulting firm, great boss, and on my way into a promotion. But what happened? What was happening for me? I was feeling like an empty robot. I felt like I had to work hard to get these big dreams that I wanted to fulfill. And here's what I was doing. I was putting myself dead last. I was taking pride in not needing any sleep. I was too busy to eat. And I convinced myself that I was happy with my job because, frankly, I was just too busy to look for one. So after a woo meditation exercise that I did with my career coach at the time, and, she got me to close my eyes. She wanted me to imagine where I was because maybe she was trying to figure out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to work. And I was so burnt out that all I could think of was a beach. That's all that she was able to get out of me. I honestly felt helpless in my career. I felt very, very, very helpless. And I realized that I desired to help others drive their careers rather than let organizations determine that for them. And my vision became helping A players like me squash imposter syndrome and land jobs they love. And that's when I decided to become a career coach and became a certified master career coach after being an apprentice for an entire year with one of the top, executive coaches on the Forbes Coaches Council. So I was really determined to solve this issue that is plagued in the workplace of so much unhappiness and burnout. And yes, it's all about, working smart and not working hard. That's really what I wanted to solve. So you mentioned that when you reached out. So this is actually funny because it's playing before I actually cover it. But I wanted to say, I decided to build an elite community of A players. And what happened now is that I have more than 83 people in my community who are top performers, and 56 of them have landed jobs that they love. So let me actually let you hear this in the words of my client, Rashid, who ended up landing his first Canadian job at Amazon. So you mentioned that when you reached out to me, you saw a lot of yourself in me. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? I'm so curious now.
Yeah. Well, yes, I have always been a person or a professional that is driven by passion. I believe in actually investing my time in something that I love, right? It can be, my job, it can be any activity. But so again, I'm driven by passion, and that's how I work. And I saw that exact same passion in you, Nara. And I realized that you were doing this just as I was doing it, not because of money, not because of status, just because of helping others. So that's what caught me. That's what caught me.
So, the moral of the story is that a lot of us
mentioned that when you reached out.
Sorry. So the moral of the story is that, ambitious people, A players, people with a lot of passion, we end up burning ourselves out because we are trying so hard to fulfill our passion. And, what I ended up doing is I built this community and I started helping, people break records, break all the myths that are out there of needing a ton of certifications, burning themselves out, doing the wrong things. One of my clients, Heath, for example, he went from self-imposed homelessness to an agile mentor in Portugal after joining my community and joining my program. And he actually, I'm so happy he actually started his first week in his role. And another client that I helped is my client, Brandon, who went from customer service and military to Scrum Master. And then, of course, my client, Rashid, who got his first job out of Mexico and landed at Amazon as a product manager. And so as I was helping all of these people, I wanted to see the pattern. What makes someone, so productive and ensure that they don't burn out and still achieve their dreams? And today, I want to talk to you about that so that you end up getting similar results as my clients. Okay, so I am introducing the slimy frog technique. So this is a technique that CEOs use to achieve their dream goal without faking it till they make it. And you can use it too to take your career to the next level and get higher pay without sacrificing sleep. All right, so today you're going to discover 6 simple shifts to stay on top of your game and maintain balance, the key to hitting that 6-figure salary without giving up sleep, and the 3 biggest pitfalls that cause most people to burn out and completely give up on their goals. So what I need from you, and this is something that I tell people whenever they hear my webinars or even when I'm coaching my clients, I say that, knowledge is not power. It's actually implementation that is power. Because at the end of the day, if you put knowledge into practice, then it is useless. And also practice without knowledge is dangerous, and you have to practice the right things. And this is key actually when it comes to burnout. So let's get into the 3 pitfalls as to why people end up burning themselves out when they're trying to go after their big dreams. And the first pitfall is focusing on the wrong things. I remember, years ago, I was at the gym and I was watching this person, on the treadmill going nuts. And then after, he completes his workout, he goes and he grabs, McDonald's. And if only that person just focused on their diet rather than increasing their cortisol, levels up and burning themselves out, exercising, they'd actually get the results. So sometimes we end up focusing on the wrong things, and that's what causes burnout. And the second thing is acting like the hero instead of the guide. Think of Steve Jobs. I mean, he got fired from his own company. That's because he was a control freak and he wasn't delegating. And I don't know what it is, but a lot of us have trouble delegating. And whether you're a leader at an organization or you're aspiring to be a leader, you need to start thinking about being a manager rather than a maker. And the art of delegation is very, very important. And the third thing is avoiding the slimy frog. And I'm actually going to talk about that a bit more. You know, a lot of us tend to complain about not having time to do that one thing that we know we really want to do. And instead we have time to go on social media and, you know, do a whole bunch of stuff that is not really helping us achieve our goals. And we're going to dig into that later. So here I present to you, everyone, the slimy frog technique. And there are 6 steps to it. I'm going to go over them, you know, those 6 steps in details. And if you stay till the end, I'm also going to give you a sneak peek behind the curtains of my actual template of how I organize my time. So the first step that I'm going to talk about is starting with your fears and not your why. And the second step is don't waste your time in the matrix. And you're going to understand what I mean when I get into it. The third step is find your focus to drive productivity. 4 is boundaries create opportunities. And 5, don't let your slimy frog slip. And then 6, build an army to break records. All right, so I love Simon Sinek, he's awesome, but respectfully, I have to disagree with him and say, you know, it's not about starting with your why, it's actually starting with your fears. Because if you don't identify your fears and what's scaring the crap out of you, then that's going to actually block you from identifying your why. And here's the deal, between 40 to 90% of human behavior is actually voluntary and habitual. Okay, there are studies that show that. So I know growing up, you know, in my childhood, there was this idea ingrained in me that if I'm always studying and going to school and, you know, getting certifications and maybe getting my master's degree, then I'm going to be successful. And I realized part of my obsession of spending, you know, more than $30,000 on certifications at what point and still getting rejected from interviews is because of that fear. And I had to really recognize that fear to unblock myself and keep myself from burning out. And then another fear that was embedded in my childhood is that, you know, yeah, I had to burn myself out doing tedious tasks, administrative tasks, just to be successful. And that also comes from childhood. You know, maybe the way you see yourself successful or make your parents proud is when you were a kid is by doing all of these, you know, administrative chores. And so maybe that is the reason you're not outsourcing certain things in order to be successful, the small things, right? So you overburden yourself and you have that idea that if I work hard and do all of these things, that's how I'm going to be successful. And then the third thing is, you know, I will skip out on socializing and get that PowerPoint done. So I know when I was a kid as well, my parents, they didn't put a lot of value on me socializing with other kids. And it's always like, be the bookworm and study. And that actually was not a healthy idea because you know that all of the best deals get closed during, you know, lunch meetings, while you're building rapport, while you're going out for drinks with your coworkers. So, you know, just think about all the fears that you have and what's blocking you before you get into your why.
One thing that actually hit me one day, you made me do one exercise. You made me write what I wanted. It was 3 things. You know, I think it was what I was looking for. Can't remember the second column, but the third column was
scared of
what I'm scared of. And I remember writing down, I'm scared of not being able, how did I write it? I'm not being able to cash out everything that I have worked for. And that somehow relates to this motivator, the status motivator. So I was really afraid of having wasted my years of experience in something that wouldn't allow me to move forward. I was afraid that I had to start all over again.
That is the biggest fear that blocks people from picking their ideal job, is starting all over again. They want to build upon where they've reached. Imagine if after all of these years you working hard on your startup, and that's what you said to me too. I'm not going to take a local role. I don't care. It's got to be in US or Canada. For me to close my business and work for a company, it's got to be this. Otherwise, it's not worth it. And so this is a true story from my client Rashid. Is when we worked together, we did this exercise where we talked about what he loves and what he wants in a job and what he's scared of, and just taking that fear and writing it down on paper is what actually unblocked him and helped him identify what his ideal job. So this is why I tell people that it is important to confront your fears in order to move forward. And then, the second thing I wanted to talk about is, don't waste your time in the matrix, because it is so, and what I mean by the matrix, you guys remember the matrix. In the matrix, there is all of this fake stuff that is out there, and then what's outside of the matrix is what is the reality, right? And I actually that analogy came from my client Rashid, and he compares the program to what's outside of the matrix. There's a lot of conflicting advice out there, and as human beings we tend to get sucked into the scams because we want those quick wins, rather than doing the simple things consistently and being patient with the results. So, you can take those, magic weight loss tablets, and you can do those juice cleanses, and maybe you'll temporarily, get a quick win, but that's not what helps people lose weight. What helps people lose weight is doing things the right way, having proper diet, having proper nutrition, following the right system. There are a lot of, scams that out there, and don't waste your time on those scams.
One thing that is a shock is that everything that is out there is not true. Nothing applies to what you actually want to do. So one of the greatest things of working with smart people, and there's a lot of smart people in this group, is learning how to crack the system, just to think, not only to think, but to act outside of the box. So then you realize that it's a parallel world with other rules and other actions, and you're going outside the system, and you're finding things and seeing things that no one would have shown you, when you were in a conventional environment. So I would say there are a lot of myths busted when you start working in this program. You can see that all the things that you were told about searching or growing your career are way different. Simple things such as how to write a resume, and that a resume has to be like really simple or ugly, even ugly, or that you have bots watching your job application. So you realize that none of that matters when you start doing things like from the right approach. It doesn't matter how you want to approach your resume, or how to apply to surpass those bots. So they don't exist. The right approach is being really honest with yourself. Like, if you are going through what actually is right for you, and you're aiming to a position in which you can actually contribute and do a greater good, then you're gonna get it. That's the right approach. Not getting rid of all pretensions and masks. That's a hard thing to do, but that's the most effective approach, and the one that will make you happier. In a conventional environment,
So, you can waste time doing things the wrong way, or you can save time doing things the right way. And that is what I teach my people in my community. So here's another thing that is important when it comes to avoiding burnout. Find your focus to drive productivity. People sometimes complain to me and say, oh my God, I don't have time. But here's the deal, when you find the intersection of your passion, what you're good at, what you love, what you can get paid for, what the world needs, that's going to drive you to be productive. You have something to look forward to. And I'm going to, show you in my client's words, Simone, how that helped her.
When I met you, it took a short time for me to find a job. Before that, it was taking me a long time, right? And I'm like, oh, maybe I should apply here, apply there and thing. But you helped narrow me down to this is what you're good at, focus on that, put all your energy into that. You're
Wow.
good at that,
Mm.
and doing those exercises helped guide me along that way. So it wasn't just because of what you said, but because of the exercises. And then you're like, okay, well, it looks like if this is where you should be going.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I see a lot of people wasting time, applying to a gazillion jobs. And if only they knew what they really wanted, they wouldn't waste their time. Because when you find that job, that's your sweet spot, that is in that intersection, and it's a Japanese term called ikigai, the job that you're really good at, you're competent at, the job that you really love, the job that creates that social impact that you want, believe me, you're going to find time to do whatever it takes to basically get there. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about that, a lot of people are guilty of is setting boundaries. Boundaries create opportunities. I had a wonderful conversation with Jürgen Appello. He's one of the top 50 leadership and management experts. He's actually on my YouTube channel. And I asked him, what makes you successful as an entrepreneur? How do you find the time to do all of these things? And he said, well, I set boundaries. And he joked about how, even with his partner, he actually draws a line in the middle of the bed and then says, this is your spot. This is my spot. And so I want you to think about who is sucking up your time. Maybe it's this friend who constantly calls you. Maybe it is a friend who's kind of constantly complaining and bringing you down. And, set some boundaries. And also consider tracking your time, not just at work. This is a productivity tip that I give a lot of people, is I do even as an entrepreneur. There are a lot of tools out there where you can, set a timer and just, document, where your time goes. And I recommend doing that for a couple of weeks, just so you can have data that shows you, well, okay, maybe, oh, I didn't realize that I spent so much time doing this. Well, I need to be more careful about that. I need to, cut that out. Okay, the fifth tip that I wanted to give you all is don't let your slimy frog slip. So I'm sure you guys were all waiting for me to talk about the slimy frog. And the analogy that I give people is there's always this one task that you absolutely need to do. That is your slimy frog. That is a task that is important for you to do to help you move forward. So whether it is, applying for a job or losing weight or being a good speaker, identify what that important thing is and make time for it in your most productive hour, and establish a daily routine. That will enable you to do this. So let's say, you have your coffee, first thing in the morning. or, in the afternoon, you go for a walk. Maybe link that slimy frog to that habit that you constantly do every day. And that's a little tip that I give people. And find the most productive time and block it in your calendar and do that one thing. You don't have to do it entirely. Let's say, you know that you need to apply for jobs. Block off some time and apply for one job a day. Get it out of the way. And then everything else in that day becomes a bonus. Okay, the last tip that I want to give you guys is building an army to break records. And so I wanted you to understand this from my client's point of view of how important it is to be part of a community and get support, be surrounded by like-minded people.
I mean, it's one thing to get world-class instruction from a career coach, but it's another to have the community of people like-minded and going through the same journey.
It's kind of like a family, it's family and friends.
It felt like I had found like a fairy godmother that knew like the language that I needed to use to get these roles and at least to get interviewed. I wasn't even getting interviewed.
You have like-minded people that are in such a stage of their life that they require a change.
When you're able to workshop what you're going through, it's priceless.
You start sharing your experience with them. They give you some advice on that, and they start sharing.
Bringing people who are like-minded together is just so powerful, so powerful.
Just having that sense of community, having those weekly, bi-weekly meetings, staying engaged and seeing other people's wins is definitely energetic. It definitely, I think, plays a role.
When people are in there like, I got my offer, I just got out of the best interview, or I got 3 more lined up, like all this good stuff just keeps coming at you and I just can't get out of there.
In 1 month, I already had 4 offers.
Mind-blowing. The community is mind-blowing. You're going through all the stages, from learning to sharing, maybe to mastering one day.
I really feel this not as a community who takes you to the goal, but also a safe place to talk to people, to get new knowledge.
The masterminds, they're just incredible when it comes to walking out of those things edified.
Like it just ends up being very intuitive and like your inherent way of explaining yourself just by being involved in the group session.
This program helped me to understand where I see myself.
It's about actually learning and growing. Then the rest comes by itself.
There's definitely a lot of value to having community and having people like count on you to participate.
Yeah, resume, and this is how you create a resume. This is not about that. It's bigger than that. It's here, fixing what's in here in order to create that resume in the end.
You see light bulbs go off in people that you've already watched grow. That's not an experience that I would trade for anything.
Really proud of being part of this group.
So what I wanted to say is, I know that you guys came to me because and joined the session because you wanted some, ABC formula in terms of how to manage your time and do all that. And I'm about to share with you a spreadsheet where I use my weekly my weekly planner and a template. But what I'll tell you is, it's those principles is what helped all of my clients get there. Sometimes we tend to focus on the mechanical things. There's a lot of fake stuff that's out there because, there are maybe software providers that, want to make a ton of money. And so they take advantage of job seekers' pain and they, use these quick solutions like, ATS testers to measure the strength of your resume or stuff like that. And this is what my community calls the matrix, because that is the truth, everyone. This is the truth of how you can be a high performer, how you can have an A-player mindset. And that's, what benefited my community. And these are hard numbers, 56 out of 76 of my clients who completed my program as of today have all landed jobs that they love. So lots of hard data. And the ones, who haven't gotten jobs are just, they just completed the program and they're interviewing. So I hope these tips are, helpful for you. And the quick thing, since I promised that I'll show, is this spreadsheet that I use to manage my time. Some techniques for you guys to kind of tactical techniques to help you with, organizing your time. Some strategies I do is I actually, compartmentalize my day. So I'll do things like, and even in your actual work environment, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how I run my business and how I organize my time, but you can still apply some of these things. So the first tip that I'll give you is determine your wake up time and stick to it. Going to bed the same time as often as possible is key. And you can determine, determining your bedtime will also enable you to stick to your wake up time. Your reverse, alarm, and I have my reverse alarm here, is my wind down time. It is an hour before bedtime. So, try to wind down before bedtime. Try not to do anything too exciting that's going to hype you up and keep you from going to bed and getting rest. I'll tell you what, there are days when I work hard as an entrepreneur, but I will always prioritize my sleep above everything else, because if you don't sleep, you're just not going to be productive. Have a cutoff time. Have a cutoff time where this is your cutoff time. You're just going to spend, that time, with your family. And during that cutoff time, try not to do things that are delivery based when it comes to your job. In fact, use that time to plan your next day. Do a brain dump of all of your to-dos, errands, things you have to do. It'll just give you relief and get it out of your head so that you're not constantly spinning on those things and it's causing you anxiety. Create a priority to-do list, 2 or 3 important tasks that you want to do early, in the morning. Do a little bit of process planning. I mean, a lot of you are part of this, Agile Expert Club, and it means that you're interested in Agile. Create a backlog of things that you need to do and just prioritize them. Follow a process, and then identify your non-urgent important work. Okay, so we have a tendency to always firefight, and we don't spend time doing the strategic things. And this is what I teach my clients. It's not just about let's go, firefight, apply. Just like we build products, we need to have a vision in terms of what kind of work we want to do. Where do we want to be in a year or two? And let's work on that path to success. And then, of course, ensure that you have self-care. Even, for me, I tend to also book. I have designated days. I block off time for self-care so that it always happens. All right. And if you want this template, feel free to send me a DM on LinkedIn. You can find me there. You can also find me on my website, nadabuhendi.com. And I'm happy, to have a virtual coffee with you, especially if you think you would benefit from the community. If you are an A player, I make time for those A players because I really want them to succeed. And so feel free to send me a DM and I can share with you that worksheet as well. All right, so I'm ready to take on any questions and for the Q&A portion.
Feel free to unmute or type your questions in the chat box.
Hello, you can unmute yourself, Swaraj. I hope I said your name right.
Evening.
Hello. Yeah, I
Thanks
can
for
hear you.
this wonderful session. I have a question regarding imposter syndrome. So, what can we do to reduce it? Sometimes we feel that, okay, we have taken the certificate, but I don't know, I have not worked so much about this thing. So, what can we do to get over it?
That is an absolutely fantastic question, and something that, a lot of my clients, when they come to me, they ask me that question. And, in my presentation, I talk about identifying your fears and what's holding you back. So maybe you want to ask yourself, well, where is this imposter syndrome, coming from? Is this something that was ingrained in me as a child? Is this something that's coming from my childhood? So I know that I felt that I was never good enough because I didn't have a lot of certifications, or I needed to have, these many certifications to feel good about myself. So that's one thing, that I want to tell you is start with your fear, And then the second thing that I wanted to say is once you find your passion, once you've identified, and you've heard, my client Simone talk about that, is, I helped her stay focused and I helped her identify her ideal job. And before that, she was a little lost and she was looking for a whole bunch of, looking for jobs. And that imposter syndrome was being triggered because she didn't find her zone of genius. So maybe you want to figure out what your zone of genius is. And once you do, you're going to feel home. You're not going to, that imposter syndrome is not going to be amplified. And then the third thing that I'm going to say is, find the right system or process. And when we find the right system and path or roadmap to help us get to where we want to be, and this is something that I help my clients with, I give them the true method, the ABC on how to get there. That definitely lowers their imposter syndrome because, they have that confidence that this path is going to help them. And then the other thing I want to say is surrounding yourself with like-minded people. We joke a lot in my community and say that this is the imposter syndrome support group. And when you're around people who are going through the same thing, you realize, oh, okay, well, it's not just me then. I feel better. This is normal. So those are a few tips that I can give you that would help with imposter syndrome based on my experience of working with.
Thanks a lot,
than
Nada. Yeah, I guess this really answered my question. Thanks a lot for that.
You're welcome.
We do have a question from our LinkedIn Live.
Sure.
Pong Tran, and I hope I said his name right. I apologize if I didn't. He's asking, so why Excel? Why not another tool like Monday/Outlook? He's just curious, but he's asking on that one.
Yeah, Fong, I didn't want to share my actual calendar because, it's confidential and I didn't want to show names of my clients on there to protect their privacy. So I just created a spreadsheet that you could use as a template. And of course, being a wonderful techie, and it sounds like you know how to use Monday and Outlook, you could totally use that and implement that in your calendar system.